You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first out of 93 WIBC. Hopefully you're not bored to death this evening by some of the other media outlets and their major news shows, from detailed Strait of Hormuz trackers and exciting, beautiful, amazing camera angles from outside Capitol Hill. Wow, incredible. We're not going to bore you to death like that. So let's talk about the FBI and arresting several individuals who have participated in espionage on behalf of communist China or Russian and Iranian sort of cyber attacks here at home. So first and foremost, this is a huge amount of praise to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Indianapolis. Yuhong Jing, a Chinese national and a former researcher at Indiana University down in Bloomington, has pled guilty to smuggling biological materials, including pathogens such as E. coli, into the country by disguising them as women's underwear shipments.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Gross. Weird. Yeah. So this guy made the decision to try to smuggle biological agents into the country by masquerading them as used women's underwear that perverts buy. Again.
Nope.
No. Now, here's the statement from the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Indianapolis. I know these guys. They're excellent. They are top game. From Special Agent in Charge Timothy J. O'Malley, those who attempt to secretly bring biological materials into the United States are taking a serious risk with public safety. If you are Communist China, that's kind of the point. Concealing E. coli to avoid detection shows a clear disregard for the law and the safety of others. The FBI will not tolerate these actions and will ensure those responsible are brought to justice. Here is what this just classy individual looks like. Yeah, that's there you go. That's the used underwear spy. We'll be hooking him up with Eric Swalwell later in the show. Otherwise, on the international kind of espionage front, a joint operation, which is supposed to be from the Russian Federation, as well as a couple of their Eastern European proxies, and also definitely Iran, wink, carried out a large home and office router targeting kind of a backdoor, trapdoor exploit, and also kind of a brute force mass hack. So the Russian Federation and probably one proxy nation made the effort to hack home and office routers to target the United States, the European Union, as well as Ukraine. So this large-scale hacking campaign, which is led and run by Russian intelligence services, was exposed and disrupted, sort of, by, of course, several intelligence services: Polish counterintelligence, the FBI, the European Union, Ukraine Security Service got in there. I guess there was also one private firm that sounded kind of an alarm on the private military contractor side of things. And a couple of weeks ago, Federal Communication Commission Chairman Brendan Carr made an announcement that no longer was the United States going to import mass cheap routers from China. And a lot of the tech world got really, really grumpy really quickly and said, well, that's not, how can you do that? We should get to buy what we want. And it so happens that a couple of weeks later, the Russian Federation engaged in a massive hacking campaign to take as many Americans' social security numbers and financial institution information, because of course there's just as big as India's telemarketing, do not redeem kind of fraud scamming. The Russian Federation is known for trying to ransomware your computer, get in there, and then try to squeeze you for all you're worth. That's the Russian side of things. So we are seeing an upswing in both biological terror smuggling. That is, again, smuggling pathogens, which China is wont to do, as well as the Russian Federation, who is stalled in Ukraine. They're not making any kind of headway. In fact, they've lost a little bit of territory here and there in the stalemate that has been the staliest of stalemates since World War I. There's going to be some kind of prodding and poking in other places to see what gives. And this is a particularly rough spot for China, because China, which got about a third of all of its oil products from Iran, not to mention purchased a huge chunk of its oil from other countries as well in the Strait of Hormuz, has now had 2, maybe 3 of its ships turned around by the United States Navy's secondary Uno reverse blockade. The Iranians said they're going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. No one is allowed in or out unless you're China. And the United States said, okay, well, tell you what, you're not just going to let China and sometimes the French and Malta through the Strait of Hormuz. So I'm going to give you a double blocking reverse blockade. 2 block, 2 furious. It's going to be great. And, well, it seems to actually be going rather well for the United States in that China is panicking. According to several diplomatic wires, as well as a report from whistleblowers inside the country, already it has been confirmed that the Chinese vast petroleum reserve has been steadily emptied out over the last couple of years as China's had to throw more of its oil into its own domestic energy production. Again, you saw that China was throwing up coal and natural gas and oil power plants as fast as they could be very poorly built. And coupled with the civil unrest and also the other pseudo-communist nations it has to prop up, well, there's not exactly a lot left. Because all of this Chinese, boom economic phenomenalism turns out not to have produced the amount that they were looking for. And again, just like with Cuba, no longer having Venezuela around to prop it up, China, in the same way without Iran being able to exchange drones and arms manufacturing and some intelligence data and money to prop up the Iranian rial, which is worth 0. Well, what do they have here? If China has tankers and these container ships that were also likely to deliver anti-air defense equipment. And by the way, when I do say Chinese vessels, I should say they're flying under newly painted, newly flagged vessels. So I do want to be clear here. Multiple reports, including Reuters, cite the Rich Starry and the Austria intercepted flying false flags. Now, you say, Tony, how do you know they were false flags? Because they were flying the flags of Botswana and Malawi. Now, in case you weren't aware, Botswana and Malawi are landlocked countries. That means they ain't got no coastline. So, Botswana and Malawi out here, with their big, huge international shipping companies, you're not exactly landing on any Malawian or Botswanian ports there, Chief. So the United States Navy intercepted the 2 and sent them back to Panda Express. A big womp womp that puts China in a very, very difficult position. And regarding that entire blockade in and of itself, no ships have made it through the United States blockade on day 1. That's, of course, according to CENTCOM. However, a lot of very mentally challenged individuals, those who find tying their shoes to be a college graduate level activity, those who may be, for example, the equity hire on the Supreme Court, writing her opinions in crayon, they might be possibly dumb enough to believe that a United States Navy blockade means that no one is moving in or out, which means the Strait of Hormuz is super duper paralyzed. No, that's not what's going on. The United States has allowed 20 commercial vessels, including cargo, container, and tanker vessels, to transit the Strait of Hormuz in the last 24 hours. The vessels abiding by the now in place U.S. blockade of the Strait aren't visiting Iranian ports. So essentially, the United States sits at the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz like a very eagle-clad bouncer. In fact, picture from Napoleon Dynamite, the combat instructor wearing the American flag pants, Rex Kwon Do. He's sitting at the foot of the Strait of Hormuz and saying, "Where are you going? Where are you going? You going to UAE? Yeah, go ahead, go along through. What's that? You're heading to Iran? No, sorry, go back to China." And that's essentially how the blockade is going so far. Now, the United States is dispatching another aircraft carrier to the region. Again, 2 to 3 oil tankers bound for China have, essentially been told to piss off. And what has Chairman Xi done about this? You guessed it, nothing. Because their eyes are now focused a little bit closer to home. Because the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, was not in Iran, is not with the Israel-Lebanese delegation, is not currently working with the vice presidential team regarding the Islamabad talks. He's not even dealing with Keir Starmer in the UK, talking about how we can import even more Muslim migrants. No. See, he was in Indonesia today, and that has Winnie the Pooh quaking as though he just saw the heffalumps and woozles. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys off to the commercial break. We're going to continue here on the live stream unabated. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, allow me to share with you a little bit about one of the most obvious yet brutally masterful ways to annoy China. China imports a lot of stuff because China is a heavy consumerist, pseudo-fascist economy. Now, again, when I say fascist, I mean the third way, meaning that the government operates the economic spheres and props up certain shell companies acting as international traders. And if you look at the model, this is kind of the same fascism model that was brought out of Italy and Germany, but it's kind of evolved out of the communist structure. You know, horseshoe theory, they share a lot of stuff. So in the Chinese energy model, they have to take in enormous amounts of stuff to prop up a country that is not producing enough stuff of worth to self-innovate and drive its own revenue. Which means that it's relying on two things. First of all, it's relying on the continual influx of resources from other countries that are resource rich that it hasn't finished exploiting yet. This would be the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. But number two, China has to rely on basically the threat that at any time it could do something. At any time, oh, you don't know what they're going to do. They're crazy. They could do something really special, like they could invade Taiwan. How many times have you heard that before? Well, one of the other things that they could do that are of kind of a concern to the international community at large is they could try to blockade the biggest and most traveled strait in the world. So again, you've heard the Strait of Hormuz has the second highest volume oil travel on the face of the earth. So the Strait of Hormuz, of all of the straits out there, sorry, we'll save the gays for Pride Month. Of all of the straits out there, the Strait of Hormuz, second most oil and petroleum products through that strait. But what's the first? Well, the first would be the Strait of Malacca. That's right, Indonesia, 80% of all of China's oil imports, including some of the oil imports that it received, that would be a past tense, through the Strait of Hormuz, goes through the Strait of Malacca. Now, it just so happens that today, you didn't hear this news yet? Secretary of War Hegseth hosted his Indonesian counterpart and announced a, quote, major defense cooperation partnership. Wow, how about that? Essentially, this means that the United States is shoring up all of the other places that China, over the last couple of decades, has thought to get kind of feisty. The president of the United States cut China out of the South American soybean and construction, whether we're talking about the Central American Panamanian nonsense and the Belt and Road initiatives with those ports, whether we're talking about Colombia, whether we're talking about the Venezuelan oil situation, whether we're talking about the Argentine soybean markets, the United States is strategically cutting out Africa of the Belt and Road initiative. And now we see here with Iran, and then also with the Strait of Malacca, China's got very few bargaining chips to bring to the massage parlor. Oh, Tony, that's like really offensive. That's like, I don't care. Here's this video from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, kind of doing a little of the, it's like a huge honor to, meet with the Secretary of Defense for Indonesia, It's just a huge, huge honor,
Well, Minister Shafri, welcome to the Pentagon. It's an honor to have you. It's an honor to host your team as well. Your visit demonstrates the importance that the War Department places on our growing security relationship, and it is growing and active with Indonesia. In recognition of the important security collaboration we are undertaking, we are announcing today that our two countries are elevating our security partnership to a major defense cooperation partnership. I appreciate your continued support in helping the United States find, return, and protect the remains of our soldiers who fought alongside Indonesians during World War II.
It's smart. It's smart diplomatically. This is something, by the way, that Trump always did rather well, which is the flattery game of diplomacy. And this is something that the president of the United States is organizing new strategic, not just allies, but kind of leverage points. They're going to make a pretty big difference in the next couple of months. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIPC.
It's closing time for the Strait of Hormuz. And, well, yeah. All right, I'm sorry. So for the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has announced that though the United States is doing a double blockade, which means now Iran is getting nothing, the Iranian foreign ministry has now announced that it has established alternate trade routes through Russia, Central Asia, and China, claiming any blockade will backfire and become America's biggest regional mistake. Source, dude, trust me. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there aren't exactly any interstate superhighways from Iran to Russia or China. It's rather mountainous and not roaded terrain. You say, Tony, what evidence for that is there? Do y'all remember the Afghanistan war that the Soviets fought? In which essentially right after they got in, the Grand Marshal said, this is the worst terrain I've ever seen in my life. And I've hiked up Siberia in the summertime, essentially when there's a lot of mud flows and melting and it's a mess. It is not an easy path from Iran up to Central Asia and good, happy, fun times. No. Number two, China's already been turned around and told, no, go home, come back later. Or if they're inside the pocket, they're told, hey, where do you think you're going? Oh, you think you're going to China? No, you're not. Turn back around and head to that Iranian port you love so much. So, no. Now, on the flip side, locally, kind of the context, the Senate Democrats are having a rough time with this because Chuck Schumer, while trying to sound really strong and brave like a big boy, is getting protests by the pro-Iran, pro-Hamas, the Islamists, and no, I'm not talking about Tucker Carlson, outside of his office in New York City. So Schumer has to get out there and put on a really tough face. But he, more than anybody right now, is really between Iraq and a hard place. So here's Schumer. I don't know. Whatever you want to call this droopy dog, sad saccharid, trying to sound tough stuff.
So let's call Trump's Iran policy for what it is. Not Trump's Operation Epic Fury, Trump's Operation Epic Failure. That's just what it is. It's an epic failure.
Get it? It's an epic fury, epic fair. It's a good one. It's great. Okay.
45 days into this war, things are worse than the day Trump started his choice of putting us in war.
Use your words.
Let's look at the chart here.
Oh yes, let's look at FedEx Kinko's behind me, and it's just a bunch of words in the Impact meme font. The Strait of Hormuz, worse. Iranian regime, worse. Okay, first of all, fact check. No. Gas prices, correct. Gas prices are not as good as they were at the start. Again, that is because of an artificial maneuver. The very last thing that the Iranian regime had, the last card they could pull, was closing the Strait of Hormuz. And congratulations, again, huge applause to you. You have successfully driven the rest of the Gulf states, including now, and I cannot believe I am saying this, freaking Lebanon, into the Abraham Accords with the United States and with Israel. No one thought you could do it. Somehow they managed to do it. Impressive. Okay, so I'll give you gas prices. And then Iran's nuclear ambition, he says, is worse. By what metric? What are you talking about? Of the 25 guys that we believe had the recipe for the secret sauce of nuclear weaponanigans in Iran, 23 of those dudes are now dead. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but this isn't exactly like building IKEA furniture. You kind of need a little bit more than just two random dudes who can't meet in person because if they do, they'll die. And they can't meet via Microsoft Teams or Zoom because apparently that's haram. And they haven't figured out how to use, telecommunication yet. Hoping this might be the year. You never know. So we've turned to the chart. Does it mean anything? No. Also, probably you shouldn't get out there and when you say things like the regime is much, much worse. I mean, it's certainly worse off because President Pezekian, President Pezekistan, President Pez Dispenser, the somewhat secular president of Iran, the head of the parliament, he is now at pretty strong odds against the IRGC, essentially the Iranian version of the SS, or this would be the theological paramilitary that usurped a good portion of the army and the air force and what used to be the Iranian Navy. So anyway, the IRGC, they are religious fundamentalists. I know, shocker. And it turns out they're really not a huge fan of President Pez Dispenser haggling with Vice President J.D. Vance. Because in a negotiation, you give a little, you get a little, a little back and forth there. And the IRGC essentially says, don't do any of that, we're winning. President Pez Dispenser looks around and says, have you noticed the craters that where once proud buildings and roads stood? Not to mention the Russian and Chinese anti-air systems have a record now of about 1 out of 2,085. Now, usually for batting averages that bad, you have to play for the Chicago Cubs. Sorry. So in this particular instance, there's a bit of a rift that is growing wider. And it's not just due to the IRGC sidelining civilian leadership. It's not as scurrilous and scandalous as it sounds. Essentially, what's going on there is kind of the same thing, sort of, that happens in a lot of other countries from time to time. You have a group, an individual, who wants to appoint a number of individuals to cabinet positions, like an intelligence minister, for example. And the IRGC, in this instance, looks at President Pez Dispenser and says, no, you're not going to appoint who you want. We're going to appoint people. Like the last guy they appointed to be the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, the gay one-legged dude in a coma. So, not exactly going very well over on that side. There's kind of a reports of a hidden state. Essentially, the IRGC is trying to run some key state functions, and the president's office is trying to maintain some other stuff. And once the money dries up, what's that going to stick together with good intentions and unicorn whispers? No. And this is not me saying this. This would be the foreign ministers out of the UAE, out of Qatar, out of Saudi Arabia, out of Jordan, out of Afghanistan, out of Pakistan. Afghanistan and Pakistan have not agreed on something since they've been around. So that also brings us over to the economic and hardline priority stuff. Now, I could give you my take on how the Iranian economy is doing at the moment. Probably better for this, though, would be Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, who, if possible, is even more of a down-home Baptist kind of guy than I am.
The public and private sector of Iran, if you look at it objectively, is being held together with duct tape and spit.
Correct. Well said. Well founded. So why do I bring this up here as kind of a recap? I will remind you regarding this split between the IRGC and the president's office that the president got in front of the world a couple of days ago and said, they've kind of already got a regime change. We're talking with a different couple of guys. They're very different. We like them. They're in charge of things now. And a lot of us kind of looked around and said, Mr. President, you know that the same regime is kind of in charge. Well, again, I'm not one to apply the 4D chess rule in no way, shape, or form. However, does it appear like the president of the United States essentially looked at the IRGC and said, hey, IRGC is a bunch of little babies. They coughed up power to this President Pez guy. Really great. And the IRGC is a bunch of diaper-wearing babies. They're cowards. Just ugly. They'd probably say they're related to Rosie O'Donnell. And that's the kind of stuff that it appears he did. This rift growing inside the Iranian regime means that you could be looking at some kind of a very spicy and exciting coup d'etat here pretty soon. And that doesn't even bring us over to the IRGC's latest excursion, which was finally shooting suicide drones at the Kurds, which is a bad decision. Now, radio crew, we'll catch you guys on the other side of your commercial break. We're going to do a little good decision, talk about that here on the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, while the radio crew is off in FCC-regulated commercial time, let's talk a little bit about this. So they've decided to poke the group that is arming themselves with fresh, brand new weapons and generational hate, otherwise known as whenever the Irish get pissed. In this case, though, it's the Kurds. And so the IRGC made the decision today to strike the Kurdish militant positions in Suleimania in Iraqi Kurdistan. That's right on the border. The attack was carried out using Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, the Kleenex boxes with wings. Here is a clip of the strike itself. So you can hear the whine as it grows closer and closer, and direct impact on what appears to be the eastern side of that building up against the range. And then kind of the aftermath of the strike, you can see the smoke rising kind of from the distance to the other side of that particular, actually up in the range looking down on the site. Poking the hornet's nest. Again, I don't think I would advise it, but, you know, I am neither in President Pez Dispenser's office or in the IRGC. You could probably tell by my high IQ and a lack of a kafia. So that brings us over to some of the other updates on this. Italy has now suspended its defense agreement with Israel. Prime Minister Meloni seems to be going through an interesting phase where she isn't quite sure if she wants Europe's approval, because the Europeans are being, well, Europeans, and are trying to say, we're big boys, we can stand on our own. And Prime Minister Meloni's kind of noticed Europe is a lot closer than the United States and is kind of trying to ally with the not the United States at the moment side, or its interests in the region, like a defense agreement with Israel, sharing things. By the way, as far as defense agreements are concerned, giving up intelligence to make a social statement, stupid. Defense agreements come with intelligence sharing. And by voluntarily giving up intelligence sharing to make a social statement, kind of dumb. We'll have to see how that plays out. In the meantime, however, there's some interesting details out of Lebanon, because the Lebanese government has recognized that it probably should do some negotiating with Israel about the end of Hezbollah. Now, this hasn't made everyone in the Lebanese government very excited and very happy, but they also got rid of a bunch of their Christians and kind of got rid of the whole Christian chunk of the country. So I don't really care what the lesbian ministry, the Lebanese ministry has to say. But the Lebanese culture minister, Ghassan Salameh, he called Netanyahu appalling for addressing Israeli forces inside Lebanese territory. Here he was complaining on Sky News. I just find this stuff a little fascinating.
What did you think when you saw that image of Benjamin Netanyahu on Lebanese territory?
I was appalled. It's my territory, it's not his. I was appalled by seeing him parading on the Lebanese territory.
Now, I enjoy that, because if you're such a big boy, put on your big boy pants and go down there and take the territory. If you're an impotent boy who can't get his military together and get Hezbollah out of the area, you have to rely on your own civilians inside Beirut attacking Hezbollah parades. Well, then you go down there and do it, big boy. Well, put up or shut up. It seems a little too hot. You might need to get out of the kitchen. So, great stuff there. However, regarding the negotiations with Lebanon in general, you might be wondering, wait a minute, Israel is negotiating directly with the Lebanese government? That hasn't happened before. You're correct. The Abraham Accords have come. One of Trump's greatest ambitions, which is a Middle East working together, is kind of here, and it's bizarre. We got to pick up the radio crew from commercial. Lots more news to cover. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
Taste the biscuit. Taste the goodness of the biscuit.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
So Brent crude oil. Yeah, the Brent crude oil price is in fact falling. Closed today at $95. It got down today to the mid to the low 80s, actually, 83, 84. And this is coming because the world economy is kind of reorienting as boats make quite a lovely journey across the springtime Atlantic to the United States to buy oil from us. Now, gas prices are dropping a little bit. NBC News, however, has decided to frame this as it's very, very, very bad that oil prices are dropping. I'm not joking. There was an article that came out today that suggested that the Trump administration effectuating kind of new policies in the middle of this to lower oil prices, that's actually really bad, because some countries like China may not want to buy oil. So, so Donald Trump is really bad because China may not buy oil from the United States, and that's bad. Okay, that's real special. Oil prices coming down, again, not a guarantee. I still think you'll see some elevation, you'll see some decrease over the next couple of weeks. Again, it depends how the United States ends up either controlling the oil exports and selling things, kind of like it did with Venezuela, and acting as kind of the import-export guy with regard to energy out of Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to have to take a look at that. But that brings us over to some of the bigger things regarding energy at home. So the U.S. energy grid is stretched to capacity. However, the Trump administration, especially through Energy Secretary, the Energy Secretary Sean Duffy, not Sean Duffy, excuse me, Chris Wright, the Energy Secretary, have put all of their effort into opening new pipelines, trying to build new infrastructure for energy creation, really focused on natural gas because that's what the United States has buckets and buckets of. So the administration broke ground on a new NESE gas pipeline in New York City today. The project is estimated to deliver enough natural gas to power 2.3 million homes. And the administration suggested that this might help lower average household energy costs in the region by over $1,000 a month. Not bad. Not bad. That's according to EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But here in tax season, one of the big hinge points for the administration is, are we going to see people get a lot on the tax return side and just pay less in taxes overall? So far, as we get closer and closer to tax day, that being tomorrow, indications are looking not too bad.
Tax day is tomorrow, and if you've been putting it off, this may be a good reason to take care of it. The IRS estimates the average refund increased 11% compared to last year, going from around $3,100 to $3,500. That's partially due to some new tax deductions that are in effect, including no taxes on tips or overtime. These deductions reduce taxable income and allow tipped workers to deduct up to $25,000 from qualified tips.
If this can be brought forward, this would be a starter. This wouldn't be a continual, this wouldn't be a momentum builder, it would be a starter. If you have, as I said, the end of Q2, you actually start to see taxes down, good tax returns, you see some moving forward in the investment, in the spending, you see a couple of jobs reports that don't have really bad revision downward. We're working with our Bradley Devlin, our political editor, and his team are doing some kind of the deep dive work into the differences in American natural homegrown citizen increase in job gains for those individuals in the private sector, and then kind of the immigration job numbers decreasing, kind of comparing those pieces of data out. We're still kind of waiting to see how some of that shakes out by the end of Q2 here. But so far, if the Trump administration leans into these policies and does the deregulation and the building, that's effective. Now, the question is going to be what the Iran war situation looks like at the end regarding the restoration of fuel to the rest of the world. Because if this ends with oil and, again, the price per barrel being around 50, 60, 70 bucks, that's going to be pretty substantial in lowering the cost of gasoline, lowering the cost of diesel, which needs that especially bad, which means that going into 2026, you could see a Q2 to Q3 surge. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. That's not the only thing kind of in the news that seemed to be going in the favor of the Trump administration today. Judge James Boasberg, this would be Captain assigns all of the random cases himself by spinning the wheel with only his name on it. And essentially, James Boasberg made a decision that he was going to put all of these contempt charges and little micro judicial investigations, which is nowhere in the Constitution. Whenever the Trump administration tried to deport certain individuals based on laws and statutes that are already upheld by not only other federal courts, his own federal court. And Judge James Boasberg essentially said he's going to hold, all of these Department of Homeland Security individuals in contempt, and you can't deport people just because you say they're Venezuelan migrant criminals. How dare you? That man with the MS-13 tattoo, that's a Maryland man, don't you know? Well, as dear friend of the show, Margot Cleveland from The Federalist pointed out today, an appeals court ruled against James Boasberg, finding that Boasberg's inquest was both wrong on the law and a clear violation of the separation of powers outlined in the Constitution. And the ruling it's pretty scathing. It's pretty scathing. Quote, the district court proposes to probe high-level executive branch deliberations about matters of national security and diplomacy. Essentially, they say James Boasberg wanted to stick his nose in places where he has no business sticking his nose. He's not God. He's not even an AI image of Jesus. No. James Boasberg is just a judge. As much as many in the judicial branches would love to crown themselves the ultimate authority, it says, quote, these proceedings are a clear abuse of discretion as the district court's order said nothing about transferring custody of the plaintiffs and therefore lacks the clarity to support criminal contempt based on the transfer of custody. Essentially, this is what that means. Just because the federal government wants to move the custody of an individual who's set to be deported from a Department of Homeland Security facility to a Department of Justice facility, like an FBI branch, or to a holding facility in an airport, Boasberg can't go, hey, you're transporting them. It's not beer, from Texarkana to Atlanta there, bandit. Or should I say Sheriff Buford T. Justice Boasberg. That ain't how this works. Best of luck to you here. So, quote, our assessment of the government's second petition for a writ of mandamus must account for the remarkable procedural posture of this case. We proceed by recounting the escalating exchanges between the district court and the government that have brought us to this stage. Here's what happened. The court said, dude, we have told you before. We've told you before, Boasberg. We've gone over this. And you didn't listen the last time. Instead, now for a second time, as Kyle Cheney of Politico described it, now blocking Boasberg's effort again to pursue potential criminal contempt against Kristi Noem, or now Secretary Markwayne Mullen and other DHS officials for handling of rushed deportations to El Salvador last year. Now, is this going to stop James Boasberg? No, because he's going to continue until he's impeached. How many times this dude gets to break the rules is, again, a hilarious contrast to you and I, who, if we accidentally goof up on our taxes, you're going to be hit with a little bit of jail time. But, if you're not hit with jail time and you're hit with excessive fees, does Boasberg get hit with any of that? No. He gets slapped on the wrist and he gets to go do it all over again, issuing stays, injunctions, freezes, and all this other nonsense. Now, the big problem is that if we see appeals courts and we see just standard circuit courts issuing opinions rebuking some of the activist judges, this is really going to put a pin in the last of the momentum that Democrats have essentially squandered. So to put it in perspective, right now, political momentum in the country, neither side really has any. I hate to tell you this. I know it must be shocking and terrible. According to reading the generic congressional ballots, the biggest group that is growing, you have the I'm going to vote Democrat, the I'm going to vote Republican on the generic ballot. And then in the middle, you have I either don't know or don't care or I'm not voting. That is the group that is growing right now in the polling. Every group that isn't forcing voters to choose between AIDS and HIV, that allows people to choose kind of nobody, that's the group that is growing in all of these polls. Which is why when I say Democrats and Republicans, like the Democrats' lead is diminishing and Republicans' lead is narrowing, there's no political momentum either way, because Trump has to finish after the Iran war ends. If Trump actually pulls off a pretty decent win here, which appears is on the way, once again, right after the Gulf War ended, Americans' opinion of the Gulf War surged. I mean, it went from 30% to 95% overnight. It is called the first miracle of polling. In modern polling, it's called the first miracle of polling. There's an amazing paper that I can't even believe that I'm remembering that I read back when I wrote for Lone Conservative. But regarding this particular thing, that hasn't happened yet. So there's not a lot of political momentum there. I mean, again, does that mean Americans are mad? No, it just means that people aren't like, hey, did you hear about Trump? On the Democrat side of the aisle, it's getting worse for them because they had a little bit of momentum from the ICE shooting stuff, and then they squandered all of it. And this Boasberg situation is an excellent example of how every little lever, every button, every gear that the Democrats have in the machine to work to their advantage, if they're screwing up every one of those in spectacular fashion, there's not going to be anything left in their toolbox by the time the Trump team begins to pick up momentum. This is the question. The midterms this year are not going to be about whether or not people are mad at Trump. That isn't how the midterms are going to play out this year. It isn't going to be whether people are mad at Democrats. That's not going to be, you have that kind of stuff? No, absolutely not. The core question in this next couple of months is going to be who inspires Americans or who can deliver, who's got the results, who's got the receipts. We're going to talk about that. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial side of things. Take care. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, boys, girls, and squirrels, let's talk about some of these problems. Because, is the Trump administration perfect? No. Is it making these levels of mistakes right now? Also, no. Case in point, first and foremost, the Biden administration's Department of Justice has been found to have essentially spent the entire Biden time after Roe v. Wade was tossed aside, colluding with abortion advocacy groups to hunt down and prosecute pro-life activists. Just charging them with the FACE Act for nothing. For nothing. So as a reminder, the FACE Act is the federal statute that was passed, which forbids individuals from blocking entry to abortion clinics, and then also, as kind of a caveat, also forbids individuals from going and disrupting church services for political reasons. And the Biden administration used it to, as you know, go after any individual who was a pro-life activist. If you stood outside an abortion clinic and prayed, the DOJ would investigate you. So according to Fred Lucas over at the Daily Signal, the Biden administration collaborated with pro-abortion groups in weaponizing law enforcement against pro-life individuals, according to a Tuesday report by the Justice Department. Under the leadership of Attorney General Merrick Garland, the Biden-era Justice Department aggressively applied the FACE Act against pro-life activists. So according to the report, the Department of Justice, just to save you any of the waiting to the end of the piece, the DOJ is moving forward with not only firing individuals that were somehow still in the DOJ from Biden to Trump, but also they're taking steps to ensure that those who may have violated federal statutes by essentially reaching out to activist groups or being reached out to by activist groups and saying, hey, this one guy in Michigan, the Zastros, what do you got on him? What's his driver's license number, Madge? And there were individuals inside the DOJ who said, yeah, sure, I'll give you all of this private information. Yeah, that would be illegal, to the abortion activists so they could hunt them down and try to eventually get them arrested. It's a major security breach, first of all. It violates all kinds of privacy statutes. But again, as Todd Blanche put it, no department should conduct selective prosecution based on beliefs. The weaponization that happened under the Biden administration will not be happening again. And as we work to restore integrity to the prosecutorial system, here was Todd Blanche making that statement today. Now, again, he is currently the acting Attorney General of the United States after Pam Bondi was given the see it.
What we saw is prosecutors arguing for really harsh sentences, inconsistent with what they should have been doing and inconsistent with what they were arguing when it was exactly the opposite. And we saw internal emails, internal correspondence, which is now part of the report, where Department of Justice prosecutors are working hand in hand with NGOs and nonprofits to target and go after pro-life individuals who were not breaking the law.
And in those cases, you would see pro-life individuals be given 14, 15, 16 months in prison, where an individual on the left who was prosecuted under the FACE Act would get like 3 months maybe, and then paroled out right immediately. Yeah, that's a no-no. Now, this is, believe it or not, the least of the things that are a problem for the Democrats right now, but it takes all of the wind out of their sails. We're going to get to some of these other examples. Again, lots more news to cover tonight. Don't go anywhere. I have to pick up the radio crew. Once more, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Major problems that are cropping up for Democrats all over the place. So we could and will talk about some of the other kind of weaponization style things that Democrats are trying to bring to bear. The California Assembly is considering a Nick Shirley Act, which they are using to essentially target the process of those who are whistleblowers and independent journalists who are trying to release information on fraudulent activity that has been found so often in places like California with the hospice care and the Medicaid fraud, and then Minnesota and all of the kinds of fraud. So interesting to see. We'll keep an eye on how that's turning out. But speaking of some of the fraudulent stuff, problems that Democrats are developing and that are not going away. John H. Wyndham, a former Biden Veterans Administration official, tasked with overseeing a $1 billion DEI initiative. So John H. Wyndham, a man who was hired, who was placed specifically by the Biden VA to launch a $1 billion diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, was charged with accepting thousands of dollars worth of undisclosed gifts in return for kickbacks and government contracts. Wow. That's just...
Oh, there's a big surprise. That's an incredible... I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
During his time with the project, he awarded $10 billion to a company called Cerner, which would then later be acquired by Oracle Health. Now, this is a little insult to the injury here. Over 4,000 veterans have reportedly been harmed due to this DEI data initiative, including 4 fatalities. Shocker, the DEI initiatives and this kind of fraud and this kind of waste, this kind of abuse, when Democrats are going to go make a pitch to the American people and this kind of stuff is in the way, you can't even begin to argue against this. You can't. Just like we talked about with Sheila Syphilis McCormick, whatever her name is, the lady over in Congress who defrauded FEMA, allegedly. You can't argue against that. And when you have congressmen who are now resigning for being disgusting human beings, Americans are looking at other congressmen and going, hey, wait a minute, I got a question. First of all, why aren't these other scumbags resigning from Congress? And also, number 2, how long did you guys know about this crap? How long did you know about this? Because if they were calling for Eric Swalwell to resign from, or to drop out of the governor's race, and then after some heel dragging to drop out of, or resign from Congress, because they found out suddenly, wait, so defrauding FEMA isn't good enough to call on her to resign from Congress? Or the other lady, Plaskett or Plinkett, the lady that was taking direct text messaging orders from Jeffrey Epstein after he was already in trouble for all of the pedophilia stuff while questioning Trump officials? Was that 2021? I mean, yikes. That seems kind of problematic. Maybe 2019 now that I'm thinking about that. You can't have told her to resign by now? What about, again, LaMonica McIver body slamming federal agents on camera in front of God and everybody? So this brings us over to Eric Swalwell and the additional issues afoot. So first of all, Nancy Pelosi got trotted out of the crypt to essentially say, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know nothing. Had no idea. I mean, sure, Nancy Pelosi was very close to him, given that they're both Californian pieces of debris. But Nancy Pelosi, the denture-sucking savant and former Speaker of the House, Speaker Emerita, here you go. Here she is denying, I didn't know nothing about nothing.
Some Republicans and others are saying that Democrats turned kind of a blind eye, that they knew what he was up to.
No, that's
or
not
what
true.
The allegations
That is
were.
absolutely positive. It's true that they may say that, but it is absolutely not true.
You had no idea?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, sure, it was an open secret in Washington, D.C. and California. And there were individuals who made it quite clear at the time, kind of on the inside circles, according to some DNC communications, that Swalwell, again, had his hands up more shirts and down more skirts and may have even Bill Cosby date raped some of the young ladies that he was seeing. But I mean, we had no idea. I mean, he was just a master, a sleight of hand for sure.
I had none whatsoever.
What happens in California now? He was in many of the polls, the leading candidate.
Yes, he was.
By the way, that's a stupid C-SPAN question. I'm sorry. I'm just going to level with you, or whatever this particular event is, this goofball that's acting. What happens in California now? Dude, you shouldn't, this isn't what you pitched to her. You should press her on whether or not people actually knew. But of course, you all knew this was softball, goofy nonsense. Only it isn't even me, it isn't even yours truly who needs to pop this bubble. That would be Senator Ruben Gallego, the footmouther from Arizona. Who decided to make it quite clear, yeah, we all knew about it. What, didn't you?
In the beginning, you said when you first heard these rumors a few weeks ago, that's when you called him. Then you said you've heard these rumors for years. So which one is it, Senator?
So I heard rumors of him being flirty.
And that wasn't...
Oh, rumors of being flirty. Ah, yes. Yes, I actually keep a list on my phone of all the people in politics that I know who are just, just kind of flirty, And they may compliment your shoes. Who knows? They're just kind of flirty. That's all. And then when I heard a couple weeks ago that he was an alleged rapist and womanizing, groping piece of human debris, then I was like, oh, it all makes sense. I mean, I was told years ago he was flirty. Yes. Yeah. Excellent, Mr. Excellent. Good work, Dr. Watson.
Issue enough for you to not trust him to watch your kids or be close with him?
Because, you hear this, and then when you're close to somebody and you know his wife, you see this. You see that relationship. You know that, it maybe just isn't true.
When you first heard these rumors, should you have acted?
Look at him starting to sweat. He's shifting side to side. I don't recommend doing this. When you start bobbing and weaving in verbal boxing, it ain't going too good there, Chief.
When you first heard these rumors several years ago.
The rumors I heard were that he was just a flirty social guy. That's it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, there are rumors. Oh, he's quite the flirtatious chap, He's quite known to offer his arm to ladies at the dormitoriums, that Eric Swalwell. He's quite sociable. You're so full of crap. And if you're going to lie, be good at it. You're going to get out there and try to sneak something past us. Don't make it the open secret. We all knew. And again, I love that now you have Brian Stelter again on CNN trying to trot out, this investigatory reporting we just stumbled upon and published. No, absolutely not. Again, best of luck to you on this. Radio crew, we're going to catch you guys later. We're going to continue on the live stream with a little bit more on the news side tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Hope to see you guys over here on the live stream side of things. Take care. All right, now that the radio crew has been sent off to that beautiful end of show commercial in the sky. The last dunk here and kind of the best summation of the point comes from Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker of the House, also out in California. Here's his take on the matter.
If you got the briefing I got from the FBI, you wouldn't have Swalwell on any committee. And you're going to tell me other Democrats couldn't fill that slot? He cannot get a security clearance in the private sector. So would you like to give him a government clearance? You asked me questions about Santos. You asked the questions about Swalwell. Not only was he getting a clearance, he was inside an intel committee. He had more information than the majority of all the members. Did you ever raise that issue?
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, hang on. This isn't Kevin McCarthy about this now. This is Kevin McCarthy making the case that we should have been done with Swalwell ages ago. Oh, gee, it's like somebody lined up this clip with the intention of making a completely different point here. It just so happens that there are a lot of Democrats out there right now who have made the stupid banging a Chinese spy while on an intelligence committee and the stuff that she had access to. He should have been gone ages ago. Instead, he was the front runner, like 14 to 12 at the time, of the California Democrats running for the governor position. So, again, we can do all of the fake pearl clutching that we want here, but if the Democrats really believe that this is the move to just kind of like awkwardly shuffle past it all, whistle past the graveyard, what's exactly going to inspire people out to the polls? What is? So far, I'm seeing some really goofy legal nonsense, some Nick Shirley Act kind of stuff, and then additional information that the left is doing absolutely everything they can through judicial means at the state level, and then during the Biden administration at the federal level, to go after pro-life groups. That's the move. That's the call. And sorry, on that particular matter, when it does come to actually fighting some of these battles, I've had a pretty decent relationship, kind of on a personal level, with those over at the Alliance Defending Freedom for quite a long time. We've had some of their folks here on the show. They have been fighting this battle from Biden's administration, the DOJ targeting pro-life individuals, all the way over to teachers who were wrongfully fired for whistleblowing stuff for ages. They've done a phenomenal job. They are a Christian ministry dedicated to advancing free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, parental rights, and God's design for the marriage and family. And they've scored huge legal victories. Huge legal victories. I know, I've written about many of them. We've covered many of them here on the show. Like, for example, these are some of the guys that helped topple Roe v. Wade, also securing a landmark free speech win at the Supreme Court on behalf of graphic designer Lori Smith. They're fighting some of our culture's most pressing issues, from the protection of women's sports to stopping mail-order abortion drugs. And the ADF does a lot of this work by relying on the generous support of people like you and me. I donate to the ADF consistently to protect freedom in the courtroom and in culture. So this is something that they're doing for us, for our audience, that I'm pretty thrilled they're doing for us, to be honest with you. They are doing a bit of a special campaign segment right now where every dollar that you give to the ADF will be matched 1 for 1. That means $25 becomes $50, 50 becomes 100, and that's only while their matching funds last. So you go to joinadf, joinadf.com/Tony, or if you text Tony to 83848, 83848, you can have your gift to the ADF matched. That's joinadf.com/Tony, or text Tony to 83848 to double your impact for freedom. Thrilled that ADF is sponsoring the show. They are an excellent, excellent crew. We have them on because I'm the one who pesters Lou to bring them on. That's, again, good legal work is really, really hard to find in the political realm. They do stellar, stellar stuff. So if they can't really get any headway on the legal side, because Boasberg is getting slapped, and then other older Department of Justice stuff is getting exposed, finding other fraud cases that are coming to the table, what's going to inspire people? What's going to get people out there and give them the hurrah? Ro Khanna, also from California. Ro Khanna has come forward to announce that what Americans really want is kind of the Bernie Sanders. Ro Khanna, he says that everyone wants the Bernie Sanders approach. That's why Bernie Sanders has been the nominee for the Democratic Party for such a very long time. Ro Khanna, he says, the problem is these billionaires who's out there. The Ro Khanna, he's doing it. He's a young man whose skin color is different than me, old white Bernie Sanders. Go, Ro Khanna, he's got the plan.
The moment has finally come for national health insurance. Why? Because people now realize you cannot have health care linked to your job, not at a time where your job may change or where you may lose your job. We need Medicare for all. That's a better system with better outcomes where health care is guaranteed.
Now, by the way, just cutting him off before I make fun of him for being the most uninspiring man since Hakeem Jeffries. By the way, guys, find a speaker of that. You have a guy that you want to make the Speaker of the House. Find a guy with some charisma. Find a guy. Find someone who doesn't make me want to drag my tongue through broken glass while listening to him. Don't do this. Don't find a guy who makes the policies that are supposed to get people out to vote for your candidate, because the House Speaker, you're a campaigner, right? You're supposed to campaign as the leader for your party, right? You're getting the new people elected. What is supposed to be done about this? Nationalized healthcare insurance. You do realize that the regulations on the book now are keeping a lot of the insurance markets from being something that is just an individualized market thing instead of having to go through your employer. Like, there are regulations in place that make it preferred for the insurance companies to work directly with the company in place. And again, you can't even have a lot of insurance companies that cross state boundaries. They have to be relegated to their certain regions, states, and commonwealths. So the regulation seems to be a really huge problem here. So instead, what you're suggesting is we need even more regulation. We're going to nationalize it because, oh yes, as soon as the United States nationalized private transportation on the rails, Amtrak just became amazing. Man, as soon as we nationalized the Federal Department of Education, scores went through the roof. Oh, wait, no, federalization of things absolutely sucks.
To every single person from the day they are born. For our young people, to assure career opportunity is not limited by your family's wealth. We need free college and free trade schools.
Free college, free trade school, just free everything. It's free. Who's paying for it? I don't know, but me, free. Again, Zoran Mamdani, who is currently trying to trot this garbage out in New York City. First of all, Kathy Hochul is having a stroke because all of the millionaires and billionaires and 100,000aires of New York are bailing. They are sailing as quickly as they can out of New York to any other state that will accept them and is also not California. They are fleeing to places like Florida, to places like Ohio, to places like Indiana. Why? Because people do not want to live where all of their money is confiscated for really horribly run, overpriced, overrun, garbage-filled, state-run systems. Enter in Zoran Mamdani's super big, ultra, state-sponsored, amazing socialist grocery store and air.
New York City, it is time for a grand experiment once again.
Once again, why? Because it's never worked once.
Just as LaGuardia used government to respond to the challenges of the Great Depression, we will use government to respond to rising prices and unaffordable groceries.
I love it. Remember soup line? Remember soup kitchens? Remember bread lines? Remember how great those were? Remember when nobody had any money, and so we're like, soup lines, bread lines. Yeah. Amazing. Great.
City will subsidize a core set of staples. A private operator will run the store, but they answer to the standards that the city will set.
Ah, okay.
These standards include requirements that at our stores, bread will be cheaper.
Great. I love these like standards. Like, oh, they're gonna like sweep the floors more. There's not gonna be cockroaches running throughout the bodega. Oh no, not that. No. You will price the bread cheaply. But what if we aren't able to like actually make enough to offset the costs? What if we don't make enough in profit to keep the store open? Because we have to pay bills too. There's not a magical charter that says you have to give electricity and water and staffing costs and all of the other infrastructure and things that go into running a business. You don't just give those to grocery stores free. That's not a thing. In the magical land of unicorn socialist fairy whispers.
Eggs will be cheaper. Grocery shopping will no longer be an unsolvable equation.
You know what the solution is actually here? It would be increasing supply. It would. It would be cutting out the crap that grocery store individuals are forced to pay or lowering the transport costs to bring the food to the store. Gee, it's almost like if we really multiplied the amount of energy that we were producing through things like nuclear plants, and then we could then take some of the burden off of the petroleum industry, that we could then be transporting huge amounts of food for very little money. And if we allowed the truck driving industry to self-innovate instead of importing cheap labor and in the weird regulatory system that is, we could actually have transport become more effective and inexpensive over time. What a concept.
And workers will be treated with dignity.
You're retarded. All right, I'm thrilling. So that's what we've got, the socialism stuff. Again, it's Bernie Sanders, but younger, and they're trotting out the equity hires to do it. So as if we all weren't tired of this enough, here's Bernie Sanders talking about Jeffrey Bezos. He doesn't like it. No.
Let me just mention, when we talk about the economy, how bold and aggressive these guys are.
The bold, aggressive. We're talking about AI robotics. I'm terrified. The ATM asked me to put in my PIN code, and I got scared. I knocked over the lady behind me.
The Wall Street Journal reported recently that Jeff Bezos wants to raise $100 billion to do what? To automate factories in America and around the world.
Oh my gosh, he wants to automate. You mean push the economy further than it ever has? It's ever gone? Automation technology that does in fact make it to other markets, so that instead of having to import the shirts from Vietnam, we could have the shirts made automatically here? Oh no! Oh man, all of those products in China being made automatically here? Oh, the horror! Oh no!
Say it ain't so, Bundy. Say it ain't so. It's gonna delete manufacturing. They're gonna kill Bob the Builder. They're gonna bring him out and put him on the wall and shoot him.
In English, you know what that means? It means there will no longer be manufacturing jobs in the United States or in warehouses. He wants to get rid of the 600,000 Amazon workers and replace them with robots.
Okay, so first of all, I love this. I do. I'm sorry. I really enjoy the
going to replace us with robots.
There's an episode of Futurama in which they mock the idea of robots replacing human lovers. And you have the news anchors, which is like an alien screaming about robosexuals. And is like, what's next? Gay robosexual marriage? And just like this kind, I'm sorry. This to me is funny.
They're going to replace everyone with robots.
Again, the idea that a Luddite, someone who says we need to throw away all the technology, put it in the trash can because my computer, it said I have an email and I clicked on it and it said that there's just a Nigerian prince asking me for money. Like, I put it in the trash can, I don't like it. I'm sorry, you can't get rid of tech that way. You can't. That's not a thing. The Democrat answer of anything is just, oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to delete it. It's not a thing. It's not. It didn't work during the Cold War when everyone's like, what if we just like threw all the nukes away, man? We just like threw them away. If we all tried, John Lennon is like dreaming and stuff and imagining, we just like throw them all away. That's not a thing. So again, it's really good to see this is what they've got. This is what, and then you've got Biden who's also still alive and dead at the same time. He showed up to a university, and he was like, "Oh, let's say, there's a black man. You know, I always think all black children look just like Obama," which is just like, oh my gosh. Here's Biden thinking every young black dude is Barack Obama. I'm not joking.
I want to turn around to one guy and say, Barack, what are you doing? Come here. Come here. Come here.
Hey, I was turning around and said, "Oh, wow, you're using the same sidewalk I am. Hey, how about that?" And I'm like, "Hey, you, boy. Yeah, you. Hey, come on, come here. Come here.
Come here. Come here. I feel like he should be standing to the right and I should be standing to the left.
So he finds, and I'm sorry, I've looked at someone's like, well, he does kind of look like Obama. Nah, it's just black dude in a suit, buddy. This young was. Oh my gosh.
Hey, did you just look at Barack?
I did.
Okay, great. And then we've got Kamala Harris on the other side of things. So you know, again, I haven't had the wonderful, swift, exciting opportunity just yet to talk about how Kamala Harris is considering her big run. Because again, Swalwell was maybe considering a presidential run as well. He's gone. Who's the bench? Who do they have? Who do they have? Gavin Newsom, who is just turning into the crackhead outside your speedway by the day. J.B. Pritzker, who is collecting more types of diabetes than we knew existed. Pretty soon they're going to start advertising Liberty Medical commercials just for J.B. Pritzker. It's going to be incredible. You have Gretchen Whitmer, who honestly, by the day, has no idea what she's doing. She's terrified of her own shadow in press conferences. Kathy Hochul still thinks that black children have no idea what computers are. So who's the bench? Who do they have? Pete Buttigieg and James Tallarico are like in an awkward love triangle campaign trying to sort out which one doesn't belong here race. It's not looking good. So we got to trot out the only tried and true Democrat candidate left, Kamala Harris. And who better to re-announce her return to politics than Reverend Al Sharpton?
So are you going to run again in 28?
So, okay,
I tried to be subtle, but I just figured I'd go right
well,
at
that's as subtle as Reverend Al
Okay,
Sharpton
so
could ever
while they're like trying to kiss each other in the subtle nonsense, I do want to point out again, I am begging any on the female politician side, any of you out there, please stop the whole Hillary Clinton wardrobe thing. Stop it. I'm sorry, the pantsuit era, it failed. Stop doing it. This is going to be one area. This is the one time where I'm going to say, unless you're like Melania, don't do the pantsuit thing. Just do the dress. They're really nice formal dresses. Do not dress up like a pirate who somehow stopped at the thrift store 1970s suit rack. Those shoulder pads are larger than those worn by half of the offensive line on the Steelers. Dude, I mean, I'm just saying. Look at that. Her shirt is puffier than most marshmallows.
Not being subtle.
Look at that thing. That's the shirt Jerry Seinfeld wore and was made fun of for. I mean, are you kidding me? You say, Tony, you shouldn't make fun of that. You're wearing a tan suit too. That's true. But first of all, I'm a dude and I just wear random blazers and I'm not running for office. Number two, I'm wearing different colored pants and I'm not rocking, again, what appears to be the skin of Corduroy the bear wrapped around something that should be on the Pirates of the Caribbean set at Disney.
Listen, I might. I'm thinking about it.
Please. Kamala Harris run 2.0. Let's do it. Let's have it. Let's do it. Come on. I'm here for it. You're here for it. If we're gonna suffer, then we might as well enjoy the suffer. You know, I mean, again, this is the other side, I guess, if you really want to lay into things. We could also talk about how Pelosi and other Democrats, again, this isn't exactly exciting, huge breaking news here, that obviously they're going to begin a huge series of Trump impeachments. Yeah, I know, big shocker, hoop-de-doo, whatever. I'm just not seeing it, folks. I'm just not seeing the energy, the attitude, the chutzpah, the something that is supposed to really stride forward here and bring us something that inspires people to go to the polls. I'm not seeing it. Now, on the Republican side of the aisle, you actually do need to see, for example, Senate Majority Leader John Thune actually driving some policy forward and things that are going to make things better instead of just blaming everything on the Democrats. And is Thune going to do that? Is Thune actually going to say, hey, Senate, here's where we're going to go. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to move forward and do things and pass great legislation.
Are funded. We've tried to do it that way. Democrats have blocked it. We've tried to do clean extensions, continuing resolutions that would fund those agencies, and those were also blocked by the Democrats. So the Democrats can't seem to take yes for an answer on anything. And for all what they have done here, for all intents and purposes, is shut down the appropriations process. So Republicans have been forced to do this the hard way, but we did, thankfully, because of the work that we did last summer, have been able to ensure that people at those agencies in that department are being paid.
Okay. Let's chat for just a quick second here. A Speaker of the House or a Majority Leader of the Senate is a coalition leader. You're a communicator. In a way, you are, in today's day and age, you're kind of a press secretary for your party's rule, right? What are you guys doing, right? You're not just an individual senator. You're not just Kennedy talking about, Iran's economy being spit and duct tape. You're not Ted Cruz. You're not Jim Banks. You're not Ossoff over in Georgia. You're not Cortez Masto in Nevada. You ain't John Fetterman. You are the leader of the Senate majority, all right? And so you should be saying, here's where we are going. There has never, ever, 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 ever been an election, especially a midterm, in which Republicans have gone, the Democrats are bad. And all of the country went, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that before. Whoa. You're saying the Democrats are like not doing good stuff? Never have I ever heard. Who are you convincing? I agree with you. Or the Democrats aren't doing something useful. Wow. Okay. Breaking news. Quick, somebody call CNN. No way. You have to chart a course. Americans want results. Americans don't want to hear, oh, the Democrats won't let me do nothing. Do something. Toss the filibuster out for a week. See what happens. Get some stuff done. Give us some results. Because if the Senate can't get it together, then you know what the Americans are going to wonder? Why we have a bleeping Senate in the first place. And that's where they are. The reason the generic congressional ballot is narrowing is because Americans don't care about either party. The Democrats are useless. And if all Republicans are going to do is just say, those Democrats are mean and bad. No. Oh, well, yeah. I sure feel encouraged and excited to go vote now. Quick, somebody get my ballot. No. You got to do more than that. Which means two things. First of all, it means that the Senate's either going to have to put up or shut up. Number two, it means effectively that the President of the United States is going to have to start getting behind some congressional policy and some actual single item bills that come forward and deliver. Stand and deliver. Because if you can't, if you're really just going to sit here and go, again, we have all of these appointments. We are still getting through Trump's initial list of nominations for key, crucial, core federal positions. They need filled now. I mean, if you're not going to do anything, at least send the Senate to an honest-to-God recess and let the Trump administration do some recess appointments. If he's going to govern by executive order, then just do it already. But this sitting here and finger-pointing, I didn't understand. When I was a teacher, when I was a junior high teacher especially, when I had students that would do that, and even more so when I was an inner-city high school teacher, dude, I missed having middle school students then. I thought that I could be annoyed as I ever was. And then I became a parent of toddlers. The Senate makes my toddlers look like esteemed diplomats haggling over whether Star Wars Episode 4 or Star Wars Episode 5 are better, which is the better film. The Senate is beyond silly goofiness. And this is supposed to be the bench for running for president. The reason I take a little moment to complain about that real quick, I want to tell you there are opportunities for things to do. There are opportunities for places to go, for accomplishments to be had, for results. Americans want results. We keep talking about this referendum for the president. So either make some deliveries or I'm going to stop using the service. The reason that I despise to the core of my being Walmart pickup is because if you show up to a Walmart pickup point and there are more than 3 cars in that parking lot, you are going to be there for 2.5 hours because the service sucks. So you know what? We stopped using it. Americans are the same way. What, you think that's different than how Americans view Congress? You think they're going to show up for a rally? You think they're going to show up for something if you're not doing anything? Put up or shut up. Well, what can Congress do if they're not able to pass bills? Dude, Congress has a lot more in the Constitution to do than just passing budgets. Where are the impeachments and removals of federal judges? Where's all of the investigation into former CIA and FBI officials under the Obama administration? Let's see it. Let's see the stuff. It's not that difficult to do. It's kind of a close here because there is one last little bit. I wanted to issue a very huge thank you to some of those who have given super chats. Again, we don't really ask you guys to do that, but it is very, very, very kind of y'all to do so. From Michelle McD, who said she loves this show, kind $10 super chat. Deanne McIntosh, a very kind $10 super chat. You guys don't have to do that. It's very, 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 very kind of y'all. Excuse me. Learning the Truth, $10 super chat. Very, very kind of y'all. Really, really appreciate you. There is one other question that I wanted to address before we're done for tonight's show, and that is very, very briefly here. What do I think about Viktor Orban being ousted in Hungary and the new guy taking his place? I'm going to tell you this. There are a lot of people telling you it's all over and that, everything is really terrible. And then there are a bunch of people gloating that it's so great and the fascism has been destroyed. Both of those groups are wrong. Now, I might go into a little more of it before the week's out, but I just don't care as much about Eastern Hungary. Now, I care about the cause of conservatism, absolutely. But there's kind of other stuff to report on before I get to kind of the Eastern European politics kind of a thing. So that's kind of my answer there. Well, there's some other mail time questions that we'll address before the end of the week. We'll do an honest to God mail time before it's all over. But that said, we'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.